Hi, this is Seth Whitehead, and we're happy to be joined today by Jay Roy and Patrick Dee of Dee Drilling in Mount Carmel. Like so many Illinois basin companies, Jay Roy and Patrick are a father and son team that are carrying on a family tradition in the oil business. Jay Roy and Patrick, thanks for joining us today.
It's our pleasure.
Dee Drilling's history spans 4 generations, nearly 80 years. Can you talk about the long history of the company?
I can, Seth. And I do believe this is our 80th year. I think that the way that our business started, my grandfather, who was J. Roy Dee Sr., I'm the third, was working in Burnett, Texas in the oil fields, and he was considered a cementer, and I think that means he carried wheelbarrows full of cement all day long. And after he did that enough, his older brother John said, I think you need to go get a law degree. So he helped him get to school at Cumberland to get a law degree. He actually went with his older sister so that she would tutor him, and she got a degree too. And after that, one of his early tasks was a oil case in Texas. And I think that he won a good deal of money because he won the case and he had a percentage of the winnings. And I think that he and 4 or 3 brothers and the mother were going to go retire. And after a while, in lavish lifestyle, they ran out of money. So sometime later, he was moving through or coming through Mount Carmel on a visit, and he saw a rotary rig running. They were drilling, and he got excited about that and thought about that. And I think he and his older brother John said, we can start a business here in Mount Carmel. Or actually, they landed in a couple places in Illinois, but then came to Mount Carmel. And so did, in those days, a lot of the owners or the bosses were living in Mount Carmel or Carmi or Evansville, Indiana. A lot of the workers were in Grayville, but regardless, he got a rotary rig, he got involved drilling, and they found some oil and were successful. And I think the cycles even were going on back then, so that the oil prices would be a little higher, they'd find some oil, things were good, then it got tough. It took so much money to drill wells in those days. My grandfather was a tall man with a loud voice, and he could get people excited because he was passionate about oil. And he'd talk about the places that they had to look for oil and the potential that they had. And he got a lot of people involved with him. It takes so much money that he got partners. And one of those partners was Fibber McGee. And of course, in Patrick's age group, they were not listening to the radio for their entertainment, but Fibber McGee and Molly were entertaining the same time as the Lone Ranger, who actually the original voice came from Mount Carmel. And Fibber McGee was involved and became a partner, and they found a nice field in West Crossville that we still operate. And then another partner was Jack Chrysler, and he was in New York, and that was Chrysler of the Chrysler Building and Real Estate. And his friends got involved, and so that helped in those days. After that, in the cycles, my father got involved in the oil business, but wasn't sure he really wanted that much promotion and excitement, that he was more of a person to himself. So he wasn't sure he really wanted to be in the middle of the company. He was going to do his own thing. And we hit a low cycle in the 60s. And if you wanted to stay in the business and you wanted to survive, you went to Ohio. Most of the oil people went back and forth, didn't move from Ohio. So I've got 11 brothers and sisters, and there were a bunch of us born. So Mom kept us here, but Dad would go to Ohio for a month and drill with a rig. Our company took 2 rigs there. Dad took his own rig, and they all contracted, and that kept him in the business, and it helped him survive, and it kept them involved. Later, the oil prices got a little better, and there was drilling back in Illinois, and he worked at that. I got a business finance and accounting degree at University of Florida because I thought I wanted to be as far away as I could get. I had a big family. It's like, go get some air and get some space. But I did want to come back and work with my father. So I had worked in the oil field at 14 and 15, cleaning sucker rods, and 16, painting tanks and the things like that. And I did go with my father to the rigs from time to time, and it was exciting. So I came back and worked with him. He thought that my best education to really do this was to run a service rig. I hadn't even watched one work much, but he was a great mentor, and he said, let's get a service rig, you can run it. So I'm trying to figure out in the yard how to run the blocks up and down and how to run it. And as I learned enough about it, I could take it out in the field. He came down there in his car and he said, "You know what? I've got a pretty good staff at the office. I think I'm going to come out there and work with you. I'll be the rod wrencher." And so Seth, for 5 months during the heat of that summer in '88 or something, I think he stayed out there wrenching rods, and it was a perfect way for him to mentor and teach me to like the equipment, to like what we were doing, to understand what was going on downhole, and also to get the ability to manage the people that have to do that every day, because it's hard work, and we knew that. And my brother John was out there with us, but anyway, went on to work my way up into the office, and I was trying to do both at the time, but worked my way up into the office. And Dad didn't drill as many wells during his career because he did not really like the part of finding partners and sharing a lot of times bad news that we spent a lot of money to drill a well and it's a dry hole. But I started working with Mike White, and Mike does the geology work, and he works many, many, many hours and has been successful. We've drilled our share of dry holes, but when we find oil, usually it's significant enough that it pays for the dry holes. And so the people that are involved with us, my family members and my good friends that are partners, are well rewarded because we found oil and it helps pay for those dry holes. So gosh, you have to like the roller coaster and the ups and downs. But then, you wonder, are we going to sell this thing or is it going to end? It was so tough during '86 that my oldest son, Joseph, said, "I got to go find something else. And Dad, why do you keep doing this?" And I said, "Well, I am the family member that chose this, and I guess I'll do it till the very end. And hopefully I'll last longer than some, but I'll do it." So I kept doing that. Joseph went off to work at Shell. And then later, Patrick loved to go out there in the field with me on a Saturday or a Sunday if I was pumping, checking the wells. Patrick had his boots, Patrick had his gloves. And I think when you teach your children that that's what you do and that's fun, that maybe they look forward to it. I don't know. What do you think, Pat?
I think it's fun. I enjoy it. I'm out here anywhere from 5 to 7 days a week, 10 to 14 hours a day. So, it's got to be fun if you're doing it that much. I was, brought up doing it, so that's what I know.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Patrick, because, I've been able to I don't have to work at it 7 days a week, and I don't have to work as hard because Patrick's working hard at it, and it's kind of the dues that you pay that I remember paying. I'm sorry that the Mitchells that you talked to earlier have the 7 day week, around the clock stress, because it's a lot of stress, but Patrick is carrying that stress now, but hopefully as he hires people and gets people to take responsibility, it's his team he's putting together, but I've had a great team, and I think that's really helped us with our venture of getting this to the 4th generation now.
You mentioned you have a degree in finance, and I'm sure, Patrick, you've probably had opportunities to do other things. Obviously, you've chosen this path, but can you talk about the reason that you chose this path and decided to carry on the family business?
It was fun working with my father, and it was fun to see he'd had this dream that he laid out, and he said, "This is what can happen with our oil company if we find some significant oil, and if we have good partners, and we are conservative, and we work hard at this, it can do really, really good things." The tough part is during the low commodity prices, trying to survive, but during the good times, we can pay our people bonuses. They're good people, and they get rewarded. We can do more in the community. We can upgrade our pickup trucks, because sometimes during those tough times, these trucks are breaking down, and we don't have the money to fix them, so we upgrade our equipment, and we do that. And I think that I like the roller coaster. I like the cycles, and I like the part I think that my father liked the most was that when we find oil, that a lot of people benefit. The landowner. We've watched the landowners take their part of the oil and put it back into additional field tile, drainage work, better roads, irrigations, and so then they weather their tough commodity times, low prices, because they've gotten their farms in better shape. Maybe they added extra fertilizer, so they put it all back. We put it back and try to live that conservative lifestyle so that you can survive the tough times.
Yeah, Patrick, did you ever consider doing anything else? I kind of get the feeling that you probably didn't, that this was kind of...
I did at times. watching the roller coaster, the good and bad times, made me realize that I do need a backup if something ever happened to our industry. But this is what I really wanted to do. I got an agricultural business degree just as a backup. We have family that farms. I enjoy farming. I spent a summer in Alabama with our family, helping them farm, and it was great. But this is what I ultimately wanted to do. Dad's been a great mentor, and it's great to work with your father every day. We don't always see eye to eye, but it's still fun. I had a dream that maybe someday my brother would come home and want to be a part of the business, but I think he's doing good where he's at, so I don't think that's going to happen, but you never know.
A lot of people think that you guys go out and you drill a well and you hit it, and that happens just about every time. But can you give, just for folks who may not be familiar with the odds, basically, of what are the odds of hitting a well? How many dry holes do you have to wells that actually, that you bring into production?
It's interesting, Seth, that it seems like, and I know that this has been the way for a lot of people, it seems like you get a lot of good luck at times and that there are tougher times. We're looking in new places, we're looking in the same places. Maybe we drill 4 dry holes. I think the point about our business, if we go buy a stock, we buy some Apple stock or IBM stock, we bought it at a certain price. It may go down a little bit, it may go up a little bit, it may pay dividends, but when we drill a dry hole, when we drill a well, and it may even have some oil in it, but it's not economic and we need to plug it, we have a $100,000 mistake or a failure. And we may drill 3 or 4 dry holes before we find a significant discovery or well. We may drill 5 dry holes. But kind of targets that Mike is looking for with us, and great part of our team, is the kind of target that we found a well that maybe means that there are 3 or 4 or 6 more wells to drill. And so then the odds get better. But I would say that, we're going to study hard. I think this is the thing that people also don't understand about our business, is that when we use all the tools that we have available, we still don't know if oil is there until we get the rotary rig, Mitchell Drilling, to take their bit and get down to where we want to look. And of course, we look at everything on the way down, and sometimes we get lucky and find something that we weren't necessarily looking for because we drilled in the right spot. But we have to drill it. There's no technology yet, so, and that can be painful. But there are a lot of dry holes. The good thing is, and I'm optimistic, Mike White's optimistic, and Patrick's optimistic, and we believe that there is a lot of oil still in the Illinois basin, and we just have to find it. Unfortunately, some of the places that we have to go are hard places to go. They're in sloughs and low places. They're in woolly places, and the easy places have already been maybe drilled. So we got to work a little harder at it, but we're better at it.
And can you talk about, obviously you're an E&P company.
Yes.
Exploration, production. But there's other aspects of the business that folks may not be aware of. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I would say that when the price was really low and we kind of had a crash in this industry in the after 1986, we built up a supply store, and we felt like we could sell supplies to ourselves and to people around us at a fair price, that we could recondition pumping units and gas motors, and that we could do that during the slow times, and when the times got better, we'd have an inventory to do that. So we built up the supply store. We also rent fishing tools, which are specialty tools to help you, if something went wrong and you leave something, we call it leaving junk in the hole, and you have to get it out. These specialty tools help you retrieve that. And so we rent those. And another big thing in the last few years is we've got some great mechanics. Mm-hmm. And we have a great facility, because when Dowell, which was a large service company, left Mount Carmel, they abandoned their 10-acre site. And we were able to acquire that later and put it back together. So we've got a great facility to work on equipment. And so we work on gas and diesel-powered equipment, and we have a safety lane and help inspect with the federal inspection. So we have been busy with that. And what else are we involved with?
Well, our supply store has a great downhole pump guy. One of the best shops around that I've seen. They do great repairs on other stuff. You know, we have winch trucks, tank trucks. We had an electrician. He's left for better opportunities. But we can use some of that equipment. I set an air conditioning unit on top of a building for one of the plumbing companies around here the other day. We can do outside stuff like that. We can do about anything if you give us a task.
You drive into Wabash County, and it's pretty evident that this is oil country, and the industry is still a major contributor to the jobs here. I think it's 7% of Wabash County jobs are directly provided by the oil industry, which is a lot. And your company provides, I think I saw roughly 40 jobs. Does that sound about right?
We've been 45, and we've been to 35, depending on the industry. And Seth, when you say 7% of direct jobs, I think about like when we're going to drill a well or we're working at something, how many other people are involved? The surveyors are out there with the crew, the electricians, the attorney has to do the title work, I mean, all those other people that work with us, the cat driver's out there, he's not one of our employees, digging and then putting things back in shape. And the neat thing is he's a farmer, so he knows how he wants it put back, so he's very careful. And all the other people that are working, so it's even bigger than the 7% of Wabash County. And it has been an industry that has contributed lots of money and lots of labor back to all of the infrastructure in Mount Carmel and all Wabash County.
Yeah, and it continues to be a major tax revenue generation source, funds the schools.
Absolutely.
Basically, I tell people that unless you go to oil country or in a town like Mount Carmel or a county like Wabash County, you don't realize that this is oil country and this is the fabric of the community, and definitely the case here. It's very evident.
And you know, we're proud of the farmers. We've got some great farmers in the area. We've got several different businesses that do things, but the oil is a very important part of this area, and the community does depend on that. And as you mentioned, the ad valorem taxes, or the money that goes into the school systems from our resource, is a huge help.
Especially when the state prorates the meager funding that it already had at whatever 89%, like it did for 7 years in a row.
Absolutely.
Which we're going to do a big report on later this year. You know, I think that Craig Heaton nailed it when he talked about the perception of big oil as either J.R. Ewing from Dallas. That's the mental image people get.
Yes. Or
the big, nameless, faceless corporation. That's obviously not the case here in Illinois. And a company like you guys, I mean, you've been very involved in the community. Could you just talk about that?
I was taught by my father. It's interesting. I was taught by him, and you see the cycles. My father ran the business differently than my grandfather. Dad liked to hunt and fish a lot, but he said it is important. I saw him silently contributing money, but he said, you need to be involved. So, you know, I worked my way through the Chamber of Commerce and then became president. I worked my term with the senior aides, which helped put some seniors in positions of work, and I was on the board and then later president. I was involved with the Belleville Diocese. I became on the finance committee and became the chairman of that, and I was on an Illinois Catholic Conference where I get to meet with the bishops in Chicago and things like that. But he just said it's important to contribute back money and resources, that you live in this community and you got to make it better. So we've tried to, and especially with the funds, because of the businesses limited in town, they depend on help for the sports programs, for our great hospital in town, our Wabash Valley Junior College. They depend on it, and we try to do our part for those things. So that's kind of what we get involved in.
Yeah, hopefully that I'm not going off base here, but when you guys have a success and you drill a well and you hit a good well, that money goes goes into the investors of who helped you guys drill the well. The mineral owner, obviously.
Yes.
You talk about Wabash College; they get tax revenue from that. So I think it's something that people may not be aware of is it's not just your success, it's the entire community that gets a boost from you guys having successful business.
Well, and we get to go out to the local Ford dealership and maybe replace a couple of the pickups, because now we can afford to do that. We get to build a new tank truck, and we try to think, what can we do now while we've had a success so that we can ensure that we can continue in this business. It's not exactly what you were asking, but I know in some of the interviews that you've been involved in, we talked about the major oil companies that were involved in this community. With Texaco and Shell had a water flood in town, and as they left, companies like ours needed to take those properties and show that we could continue to operate them, because we could either be more efficient or we could be more economic and we could keep them going. I think the sad thing, though, Seth, is that maybe we didn't create more infrastructure, but we just kept it going. And so, yes, Dee Drilling is glad that we got to buy some production and that it had some more potential, but sad that some of our companies left. And so that's kind of a mixed situation, I think, there. We were sorry to see them go, but glad for the opportunities.
How different, Jay, is the social and political climate from the time that you got into the business and what Patrick and his generation are seeing these days with the Keep It in the Ground movement and some of the pretty overt policies in place to drive the oil out of business here?
Well, I think that folks liked cheap gasoline when I got involved, and diesel. I think that farmers depended on that. I think that people were excited about the oil industry and excited about what we were doing, and landowners were excited that we had asked them if we could come on their property and take a chance, and maybe we could all succeed. And I think that now the landowners have paid so much for their acre of ground, and maybe they're saying, I'm not sure if I really want to be involved in that right now. Or people are, as you say, the political, it's like, aren't you guys doing some bad things? Are you polluting? Are you cleaning up behind yourself? And we are, yes, let us show you. But we have to jump through hoops and we have to prove. And then, as you know, we've got a whole large group of people in the northern part of our state that have no idea that what we're doing down here. They don't have any idea about how oil is produced, or that this is really important for this part of our state, these jobs, and that we are being safe and that we are furnishing good jobs, rewarding those people and their families, and we are giving back to the community. So we gotta keep on. I don't know if you got a different take, but it's a struggle.
It's amazing how many people just don't even realize that oil exists in this area.
Well, and the neat thing is that it can coexist with the farming. We don't really take up very much space, and so when we're drilling a well, and if we're successful, that income that goes back to that farm is much more income than they were going to produce from that bean crop and that corn crop. And it's been a windfall for them because they're able to put that back in their infrastructure. They put more field tile in, they put irrigation systems in, they fix their ditches, they add more fertilizer, and it helps them get through those tough commodity prices. So, it's a win-win, and we can coexist, and we do like to coexist, and we have got great relationships with landowners and folks that we've worked with.
And in a sense, you guys are pure energy farmers.
Wow. We are.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Absolutely.
This is probably a tough question. It's kind of short, but tough question I've asked everybody so far. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions about the Illinois oil industry specifically?
I think it's that we're not big oil. We're not doing these big things like you're doing in Texas, offshore. We're just little guys here trying to make 10, 15 barrel a day well.
Yeah, it's really odd, and it just blows my mind. But seems to be a perception that shale development is happening in Illinois. Of course, it almost did, and I think it probably could someday, but that's just not happening here. It's very, not identical, but it seems similar to what's been going on for decades, so it always baffles me that there's a big uproar from, I don't know, some media accounts and whatnot. But,
well, as you mentioned, we did have some large players come into the Illinois basin in the last several years, and gosh, it doesn't work for us economic-wise, but so that they could put large tracts of acreage together and tie it up for long periods of time, they offered large dollars per acre leases that don't fit in our economics. That scared us. I think we were excited that they would try some things, as were tried in other basins, that might work and might give us some longevity, but it's not we can't play that game. We don't have those deep pockets. We cannot pay a large amount of lease money and then make it economic for us and our partners. So, in one respect, it was exciting. I know a number of landowners got some large checks, but they didn't get wells drilled and they didn't find oil or gas on them. And so when we go out with our struggle of trying to convince the landowners that they do want to work with us, we try to explain that that one-time check for the lease money is not near what their part of oil production, if we find a successful production or a successful pay on them, would amount to, and that this can last a lot longer. So I'm glad for the ones that got lease money, but we weren't going to be able to play that game, and so that was a misconception. We're just small operators that are furnishing jobs that do it every day through the tough times. We figured out a way to try to survive. It gets painful. We do other things, and through the good times, we try to put back and do the infrastructure. During some of our better times, we had to replace the roof on this building of ours, and so we put a white vinyl roof and a solar system. So it's solar tubes that get the reflection from the sun. And Seth, I think this explains that we are energy people and not just oil people, that we are open-minded and that we want these things to be successful. So we put the solar on there, and on a nice sunny day, it is helping us probably about a quarter of our electric bill in this building. But on a day like today, it's a little overcast, it's not helping much. On a weekend, when we may not be running the air conditioner or the heat, it feeds back into the grid. So it is green energy. It helps a little, but it also helped that we got a grant to put it on. It was subsidized. So we got some help from the state of Illinois, and we were able to deduct when we'd found some oil, so that worked. We also, at my house and at our supply store, we put in geothermal. So a series of wells were drilled, and that fluid helps reduce our air conditioning and our heating, but on the real cold days, it's not helping. The system gets overridden and we're using natural gas. And on the real hot days, it can't keep up either, so the electric is running the air conditioners, but it helps some. So we're very interested in that, and we want that to succeed, but they're going to need our product to run cars and to run airplanes for a long time. There's not going to be a good substitute.
And I can't emphasize that enough. There isn't a serious analysis that exists that doesn't project not only continued high oil demand through basically 2040, 2050, demand will increase. This is even if considering the fact that electric cars may become more prominent.
I wanted to show you, Seth, I brought a little cartoon, and this is a funny cartoon because I know right now there's such a huge push for the going green, and we want to go green too. We consider ourselves green, like the ag people, but this is a bus that they're trying to run, and they've stopped at the station, and sorry, we're out of pixie dust. So I don't think they're going to be able to go to their convention.
It bothers me that folks just think that the oil industry is anti-renewable energy. But what you're talking about is the fact that energy demand is going to grow, and that we're going to need an all-above approach to meet that demand.
As I mentioned, Mike White, that does our geology, talked to me, I think, before the horizontal got to be used in this basin, and before they found some of the big fields and learned how to get the oil out of them in the Dakotas and stuff. He said, the sad thing is we are out of oil. We have reached the curve worldwide, and our children are not going to get to do the things we did. They're not going to be able to get in a Suburban or an Expedition or any kind of car for that matter and drive down to Disney World in Florida and have a tour. He just said it's sad because it finished in our term because we can't find any more. Well, the good news is that those techniques work, they're safe, and that we've got plenty of oil and gas. And as I appreciate Craig Heaton mentioned in an earlier interview, Craig came from Mount Carmel. We have loved following him in his law practice, and he's helped us. But Craig said we're going to need the oil into the 40s, and we've got plenty here, and we're doing it safely. So that was the good news. I thought our industry, I'm proud of that. When I was on the Independent Petroleum Association of America board, and being on the board, I represent Illinois. When oil people from all around the country get together, and once a year we go to Washington for the call-up to talk about whatever our issues were. And I remember going there in the time of our oil crisis, and the commodity prices were low, and they were thinking about even creating some bills against us. And so our message that time was, we are dependent on people in the world for our oil in this country, in Illinois and in the rest of the country, Venezuela. And we know how bad that is right now. And I just read in the newspaper this morning with their blackouts, it's really hurting their production. But we were dependent on Venezuela oil, and we were dependent on oil from Iraq and Iran. And we were trying to tell our legislators who are representing us out there that we're in a bad place because we have to get this from people who don't like us. And they may decide we don't get it. And I know that there have been times where our industry got a bad rap because the gasoline prices got high. But I have learned there's one thing that makes those drivers even angrier, and that's when they pull in and they're told, you can't have any today, we're out. Or this is an even odd and you don't get it today, you don't get any oil. Seth, I don't care if you got $7 a gallon and you're willing to pay that $7 a gallon, you don't get it. That's tough, and that's really tough. As Patrick mentioned, our family farms, they have to have the gas and the diesel to do what they have to do to feed. So anyway, the good news is we've solved some of those problems. Now we can export oil and gas. It's helping our balance of trade. Now we can not be so dependent on the people that don't like us. That's the good news.
Really, in summary, it seems oil and energy are everything. And we really haven't had energy poverty in this country like many parts of the world has. So we've really been fortunate and rather spoiled. And I think that we can't really talk about it enough. That if we haven't had the innovation that we've had in the last 10 years, that we'd be importing a whole lot of oil and natural gas, and the price would be unbelievably high. So Illinois is an eminently small part of the national picture, but definitely a contributor, and I think that the future is brighter than most people realize.
We are very proud to be a part of that, and we are very proud of the 80 years, and that we have continued to do things better and better, but we're very proud to still be doing that. We like doing this. It is a struggle. Those cycles, I get to hear Brad Gazelle talk about the cycles. The cycles are tough. How do you get through them? We can't avoid that. We've tried to talk in Washington about the cycles and that we need, a fair commodity price, but they're not going to do anything about that. They're not going to fix the commodities, the corn and the beans. So we have to be strong, and we have to be conservative, and we have to put back in our business, which we do, and get through the tough times and help our friends with all we can help them with to survive, and then during the better times, then we can put back in our businesses and do that. But that's what we got to do, and we're doing it.
The thing that people don't realize, if say the Keeping in the Ground movement were successful, the folks pushing the Green New Deal were successful, all it would result in is us importing a whole lot more energy from, as you mentioned, countries that do not like us. And there's just no getting around that fact. So it's important.
And we know that the lack of oil means lack of air conditioning, means lack of heat during the winter. We know that lack of medicine, we know that really suffers, and that a tremendous amount of damage will be done if we don't have enough fuel, and people's lives will be affected. Not only more miserable, but folks won't survive, and that's a big, important part.
Okay. Close to our family ranch down in Alabama, there was a wood pelletizing company there, and they were shipping all these wood pellets for heating, I guess, to Europe. And Europe was paying the cost to pelletize the wood, ship it down the river in a barge, put it onto a big boat, ship it across the ocean just to meet their renewable standards. So how effective is that?
Exactly. And the only thing worse than that is some places in the world are using animal waste and human waste, I'll use that as a euphemism, to heat and cook. So we've got it made here, and it's because of companies like you guys.
One thing I didn't mention was that I have a sister. It's a family business, and I have a sister that operates the road grader with us and drives the tank truck and does a great job and likes her part in the business. She's a good welder. My daughter, Erin, got to work in the office and learn secretarial skills and got to learn good practices and maybe work ethic before she went off to California to work for Netflix, or HBO New York and now Netflix. And a number of my sisters got to work in the office and learn things. So the neat thing about a family business is that it's a training ground to do whatever you want to do. And some people are not going to want to do this. We don't try to make them do that. We don't try to corral them. It's their choice, but it's a great training ground and great to be able to work with your son as I do.
All right, Jay, Patrick, really appreciate you guys joining us today. Dee Drilling in Mount Carmel, been in business 80 years. As I said to the Mitchells, here's to 70, 80 more years.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you,
I hope
Seth.
so.